I'm going to be reviewing the two new Kilian releases, which are LHeure Verte, or the Green Hour, and Apple Brandy on the Rocks. You'll notice this one is not open yet. I'm also going to be comparing the new Apple Brandy on the Rocks to the original Kilian Apple Brandy, which I have a decant of. I got quite some time ago from Max Aroma, and I've been savoring it. There's a little bit left in there, but anyway, I've worn these both twice, and I've worn like Apple Brandy, the original, and on the Rocks together, a full wearing once, and then I also have all three on right now. So I'll kind of give you my thoughts after wearing them a few times, let you know kind of what they smell like to me, the performance, etc. And then at the end, I'll let you know if I'm actually gonna open this one or not, because I do have a sample of it that the sales associate at Saks Fifth Avenue made for me. And after sampling it, I'm not quite sure. So I'll let you know at the end if I'm gonna keep that one or not. All right, so let's go ahead and start with LHeure Verte, which is a fragrance that is inspired by absinthe. And absinthe is an anise flavored liqueur. It does have other like herbal notes to it, like fennel, for example, but fennel and anise do kind of have a pretty similar scent profile, at least to me. So this one, I will tell you right away, when I wore it, it immediately reminded me of absinthe. So if you have smelled that, or just in general, if you've smelled anise or black licorice, those kinds of things are what this reminds me of. So LHeure Verte was created by Matthew Nardin, and in addition to this sort of licorice root absinthe anise thing that's going on, there is a sweetness to this. So let me go ahead, I'm gonna respray this on a tester strip to get the opening, but I have the dry down right here on the inside of my elbow. And like I said, I've worn this already. When I tested this in store, this is actually the one that really caught my attention. I find this to be pretty unique and original. Yeah, there are other fragrances out there that do feature sort of anise or licorice, but this one does smell a bit unique to me, and I really feel like they've done a great job featuring that particular accord. So in the opening, I think this fragrance is maybe a little bit sweeter than in the dry down. It's in your face absinthe anise. I really, really enjoy the opening, but I also enjoy the dry down. There's also this like violet leaf note and some woody notes like vetiver and patchouli that are in here. And those, as it dries down, start to come out more. Now, like when I smell it on my skin, I get more of that and less of the sort of absinthe thing going on, but it still smells very, very good. I like both the opening and the dry down. And obviously when I tested this in store and I bought it right away, I didn't have like a full experience of the dry down, but I could already start to pick up that transition as I was like talking to the sales associate and whatnot. And I really enjoyed that transition. So this one to me is definitely unique. It's a winner in my opinion, but if you don't like the idea of anise in your fragrances, you'll hate this because it's very strong, especially in the opening. If you don't like patchouli is difficult for me sometimes, and in this, it doesn't bother me at all. It's very much on the woody side, in my opinion. And I would say I actually get more violet leaf and maybe even vetiver than I do patchouli, but it's kind of like a mix, and I don't think between the vetiver and patchouli, I'm not sure if either one really stands out to be stronger than the other in the dry down anyway. So overall, I really, really like this fragrance. I think it's a very unisex because like it smells like absinthe. Like I said, I mean, it's not particularly masculine or feminine in my opinion. So I think a lot of people really like this. In terms of performance, this one, actually, both of them are kind of moderate performance. I do think that LHeure Verte, at least on my skin, seems to project a little bit more. And I think they kind of last about the same amount of time, 6, 7, maybe 8 hours, but it's like pretty quiet by then. I would say if you're familiar with the previous liqueur releases, these in terms of like projection and longevity fall somewhere between LHeure and Roses on Ice. LHeure is definitely still, in my opinion, the strongest, both in projection and longevity. Like that one personally lasts a long time on me. And then Roses on Ice is the softest in my opinion. These kind of fall directly in the middle. I think between these two, this one maybe lasts a tiny bit longer, projects a little bit more, but in general, I would just say both of them are kind of moderate. All right, now let's talk about Apple Brandy on the Rocks and compare it to the original. So I blind bought this from Sephora as soon as it popped up on their site, which is like right at the end of August. And then before it arrived, I happened to stop by my local Saks and they had testers. So I was like, well, let me just smell it first and see before I open it, because I don't like taking back stuff that's been opened. I feel like it's wasteful. So I was like, let me see. I ended up buying LHeure Verte, and the sales associate, she was very generous. Her name, by the way, is Sabrina. If you are in the Indy area, she's awesome. So highly recommend her. But anyway, she made me a sample so I could also like try it a couple times even after I left the store, and that's exactly what I've done. So you can see there's almost nothing left in here. There's just a little bit so I can spray it to get the opening. And like I said, I've been wearing it, I wore it once on its own, but then also I've compared it to this a bit, so I can kind of tell you the differences. So let me just use the last little bit of my sample here. Yeah, so both Apple Brandy on the Rocks and the original Apple Brandy were created by Sydney Lancester, and I enjoy them both. I will go ahead and tell you right now, I still prefer the original, and let me explain why. So the opening of the new one is not my favorite. There is definitely a little bit less warmth to it than the original, which I'm sure is probably because of whatever this On the Rocks Accord is. I know they said that there's been pineapple added. I can tell. It's more fruity, or it's fruitier, geez, grammar. It's fruitier than the original for sure. And I would say that, like I said, it's just kind of less warm. There's not as much woodiness to it as the original. And honestly, the opening to me leans a little bit on the masculine side, whereas the original I feel like is pretty dead center unisex in my opinion. This one does seem, for some reason, I'm not sure what it is in here, but something in here is making me think it leans a little bit masculine. Can also tell there's ambroxan added here, which I think is part of that On the Rocks Accord. And I think there's like a mossiness to this one that isn't as much in the original. So yeah, not huge on the opening. Now I have the dry down on my left wrist here. And I would say in the dry down, it gets soft. Like this is pretty soft already, and I've had it on for maybe 2 hours now. But I would say that it does get a little bit woodier, maybe like a cedar style wood, something like that. And then I can get the vanilla that's in here a little bit more because the fruitiness has toned down. Like in the opening, that pineapple-y fruitiness kind of overwhelms maybe some of the other notes. Also in the opening, there is a pretty prominent cardamom note that I can pick up, which maybe that's what's making me think it leans a little bit more traditionally masculine. But as it dries down, that kind of goes away and I don't detect it as much. So honestly, the dry down is definitely more pleasant to me, but it also gets soft pretty quickly. And so I'm, not as in love with that as I am the original. So again, the original I do have a decant of. I have it on my other wrist and it's been on just as long, about 2 hours. Let me spray it just a little bit because I don't want to waste any of this. I really wish I could get a bottle of the original. So the original reminds me of like sipping on maybe like a not overly sweet, but like a slightly sweet, warm apple cider that's been spiked with brandy, of course, or cognac or whatever you want to put in it, but brandy in this case, of course. It has a little bit of a spiciness to it, but it's like you're drinking that in a wood cabin, like a log cabin, because you can smell a lot of woods in this as well. To me, this is definitely warmer, cozier, and I would say maybe a little bit sweeter in a different way. Like whereas the new one is very like fruity sweet, this is more of that like dried fruits kind of sweetness like you would get in brandy, and the vanilla aspect that you would get from that as well. So for me, I definitely still prefer the original apple brandy. I like the new one, but I don't think I'm going to keep this. I think I'm actually going to take this back to Sephora because I don't like it enough. And like I said, it does get pretty soft on me quickly. When I smell the two side by side, like the original and this new one, the new one, it's, like I said, it's pretty light now, and it does get a little bit more woody. The original isn't super strong at this point either, but it is a little bit more prominent on my skin than the new version with the On the Rocks Accord in it. All in all, I think if you want something that's cozier, a little warmer, very much like you're drinking a spiced cider in a log cabin, then the original apple brandy is the one that's for you. It's definitely my favorite. But if you want something that's maybe a little bit more versatile, a little fresher, then I think the new version, the Apple Brandy on the Rocks, might be a good option. Like I said, overall, I'm not blown away by it. I don't dislike it. I do like it. I think it smells good. but I'm not sure if it smells good enough for me to open this. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments down below. If you've tried these, I would love to know what you think and maybe how these perform on you. Like I said, LHeure Verte does a little bit better on my skin than Apple Brandy on the rocks, but they're both in the moderate longevity range in my opinion. I hope this video was helpful. If so, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell and I will see you all next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.